Okay, so before we get into the video, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support on my video essay for the Batman. It has got way more views than I ever expected it would, and it's been so fun communicating with you guys in the comments. I would love it if you guys would all drop a like and comment on this video, as I try to reply to them all, and I'd love to discuss these MCU rankings with all of you. I'm sure your list will look way different than mine, and I'd love to discuss. Alright, with that said, let's get into the video. With Black Panther: Wakanda Forever releasing this past weekend, I thought this would be a good time to give my rankings of all the films within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting from least favorite all the way to my number one MCU film. Alright, kicking off the list is Thor: The Dark World. This pile of just kidding. Actually not a terrible film in my opinion, and is more of an ode to how consistent the MCU has been with releasing pretty great films. However, this sequel did not capture any of the same charm or Shakespearean family drama that the original Thor did. The villain was very forgettable, although I will admit Malekith was aesthetically pretty awesome. Something about Jane becoming the host of the Ether and essentially harnessing an Infinity Stone, forcing Thor to take her to Asgard combined with humor given in the scenario, it just didn't work for me. There's still plenty of fun to be had here, especially with Tom Hiddleston's performance. However, it ranks last on my list, not an MCU film I ever return to. Next up, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp. Okay guys, this one is ranked so low on my list because I can honestly say I don't remember a single thing about this film. Like at all. I don't remember it even being bad, just forgettable. The only part of this movie that exists in my mind is the post-credit scene in which Paul Rudd becomes dusted while experimenting in the quantum realm or wherever the hell he was. Other than that, what an extremely forgettable experience. Definitely felt a bit uninspired to me, and I have never felt the need to revisit this film. Mainly because I forget it exists. Thor: Love and Thunder. This just did not feel like a real film to me. This felt like a parody. It felt uninspired and unneeded. I thought Christian Bale was very underutilized. Every element of the film seemingly was for comedy. I felt as if I was watching actors on a green screen stage, not caring too much about what they were making. It never felt like a real story I could sink into. This was the definition of a lifeless corporate production from Disney. However, with all that being said, I can understand that if going in, you aren't looking for anything to take too seriously and just want an easy to digest comedy. The film is most definitely unique aesthetically and easy to watch entertainment for a mass audience. I love Taika Waititi, I just think he missed the mark here. Next, I have Captain Marvel. Judging by audience scores and conversations on Twitter, I know a lot of you would probably have this ranked last on your list. But I somewhat enjoyed the film for the most part. Now keep in mind, I have never read the Captain Marvel comics, nor am I familiar with the source material at all for that matter. And going into the film, I didn't really have any expectations for it. And I found myself going on a decently fun cosmic adventure with some good laughs, and I just got a kick out of seeing a pre-Avengers era Nick Fury. Also, there's just something about this scene. Definitely not one of Marvel's better entries, or a film I ever get a craving to watch again, but a decent watch nonetheless. Alright, next up, I have Chloe Zhao's Eternals. This one is a bit tricky for me because I genuinely love how ambitious this film was. Vibe, aesthetic, and storytelling was the most unique Marvel has been in years, and for that reason I really appreciated the film. I think the movie has some really standout scenes, and the MCU made its best effort at making a slower burn sci-fi flick for the most part, which I love. I love how Marvel showed their version of human history and how the Eternals were to not interfere. That struggle was an intriguing element in the film. I enjoyed the change of pace from Marvel, in which this was more of a dialogue-heavy film that posed some big questions regarding humanity. However, the film completely falls apart in the third act for me. The film drags on far too long, and some of the choices characters make take me out of the film. I've seen it twice, and I'm not sure I could ever sit through it again, at least not for a long time. I really appreciated the effort here from Marvel. It just didn't fully pan out in my opinion. I just hope they take more of these risks. The audience and critic reception to this movie worries me that we may only ever get standard comic book content from Marvel.
What's this even made of? Vibranium?
Next is Iron Man 3. Let me start off by saying this is a very well-made film, feeling much more like a Shane Black film than an Iron Man film, which didn't always work at times. I think the main reason I have this so low on the list is the heartbreaking experience I had as a young kid watching this in the theater, to see that Ben Kingsley was indeed not the Mandarin. The amount of times I rewatched the trailer to this movie when I was young, being too excited to see this amazing looking villain.
But I'm sure he's a really good guy. I'm gonna shoot him in the head.
And being so disappointed when the film finally reveals Guy Pearce as the Mandarin.
I am the Mandarin!
That, mixed with all the Iron Man suits during the third act being remotely piloted, I never liked what that set up for the future of the MCU, taking away the stakes in an otherwise forgetful action sequence, and thinking to myself, why would Tony ever actually go in the suit again, considering how close this technology is to being perfected? Again, not a bad film, just not one of my favorite MCU ventures.
My name's Trevor Slattery.
I cannot believe my eyes.
Next, I have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is another film I was really excited for. Sam Raimi's return to comic book films. which his directing keeps the movie very entertaining, yet is also part of its downfall as well. I was really looking forward to the chaos that could ensue utilizing the multiverse, but it never really happens. Instead, we watch Wanda turn into a cold-blooded killer chasing around a three-eyed Doctor Strange with random Halloween CGI skeletons roaming about. I still feel like Wanda's villain arc is a little bit of overkill. She forgets everyone she has ever known and becomes a Michael Myers-esque murdering machine, even toward her previous allies. All from losing her imaginary children to save an entire town of innocents that she was holding captive in the first place? I don't know, is it just me?
I'm not a monster, Stephen. I'm a mother.
Even the Illuminati scene in the film felt like fourth wall breaking fan service and took me out of the film. There were lots of scenes throughout that I just couldn't take seriously. Doctor Strange with three eyes fighting in the climax, I was honestly holding in my laugh while in the theater. I even found it comical when Wanda is chasing down the characters, creeping slowly toward them like a zombie. Like, what? And then the epic climax of the third act is Doctor Strange doing his best Elton John cover? I don't know, this entry just wasn't it for me. There's decent visuals, but I think a movie focusing on the multiverse could have been far superior to the one we got. Next on my list is Black Widow. For the most part, I enjoyed this film. A more subtle spy action thriller as opposed to a cosmic, universe-altering adventure. I love the family dynamic and two great standout characters and performances. I loved all the quieter scenes where we learn more about Natasha, her backstory, and her family. The film definitely falls apart in the third act for me though. In what was originally a more grounded action thriller, turns into an extravaganza that feels so out of place, and the CGI is horrendous here.
Don't do it! This was fun! No!
Like, wow, that is rough. Overall, not a bad film, but not a great one either.
No!
Iron Man 2 is next on my list. Definitely a nostalgic film for me, or a nostalgic infomercial for the Avengers, I should probably say. The film here never feels as if it has any stakes. Definitely feels a bit messy, and I can't say I enjoy either of the villains. Or the bird.
Please stop my bullet.
The film is entertaining, but there's not much going on. We're just kind of hanging out with Tony, Nick Fury, and Natasha for 2 hours. Enjoyable enough movie, but definitely lower tier Marvel.
21, can you do something for me? 21.
Next, I have Avengers Age of Ultron. Definitely a major step down from the first Avengers film in terms of quality. There's certainly many great moments throughout the film, including the camaraderie at the Avengers party. All the characters attempting to lift Mjolnir was great. I thought the introductions to Wanda and Pietro were handled very well. Also, James Spader's Ultron was awesome. However, the film is definitely overstuffed, a bit messy, and not nearly as enjoyable as the original Avengers. It doesn't really try anything new or innovative, but rather just try to rehash classic Marvel moments on a grander scale. The third act is especially meh and by the numbers. There's also some scenes that are just shoehorned in to further the Infinity storyline, which is fine, but they feel so forced and odd within the flow of this movie. But hey, it might be the only movie in the franchise where when a character dies, he stays dead. So that's a plus. Next up, Doctor Strange. Again, shout out to Marvel because by no means is this a poor film. They just have so many great ones, and this isn't quite on that list. The visuals are outstanding, and the third act is mind-bending and different from most comic book films, which I really appreciated. However, I never felt attached to any of the characters here. It feels a little bit cold, and felt a bit more like if I was on an amusement ride than any immersive story. A bit of a forgettable experience for me. The movie is well done and all, but not one that sticks out or requires rewatching in my opinion. Also, did anyone get sick of Doctor Strange saying this? Probably as sick as you guys are seeing this TV static transition. But it's all I got, so you're stuck with it for now.
No!
Alright, next on this list is Guardians of the Galaxy. Volume 2. I think I may like this film more than most. I just love these characters so much, and although there aren't too many impactful elements within the plot, hanging out with these Guardians is just endlessly enjoyable for me. The banter between the characters and the relationships they share is infectious, and I find myself getting even more attached to these characters every time I watch this movie. The biggest flaw within the movie here is that there's not a whole lot going on plot-wise. A slight over-reliance on gags, and Star-Lord's father being Ego is pretty ridiculous at the end, at least in its execution. An enjoyable flick nonetheless. The original Ant-Man is next on the list. This is a smaller scale, harmless entry into the MCU canon. Paul Rudd is as likable as ever, the humor is great, characters are all likable, and the emotional side is present here as well. I love the technique they use when Michael Pena is telling his stories.
So I'm at this art museum with my cousin Ignacio, right?
I also love the third act battle as it swaps between the intense close-up shots and then pans out to see a piece on a train set fall. A really easy to watch heist comedy from Marvel that is joyous and clever. I think it's much better than its sequel.
I want your daddy too.
Next up, Thor. 2011's Thor is a super fun experience as it introduced the masses to Asgard, that scary ice place with the White Walkers, as well as that little random town in the States. Rewatching this film, it's crazy to see how much Chris Hemsworth's Thor has evolved as a character. Instead of characters laughing at him for his fish out of water persona, we're now laughing with him as he's become one of the funnier characters within the MCU. This film has incredible family drama as it's very Shakespearean in that way. Loki is great, Anthony Hopkins as Odin is awesome. The film is exceptional at making these gods and larger-than-life characters such relatable people, with themes that so many can connect to, such as trying to gain your parents' respect, validation, sibling rivalry, jealousy, and legacy. This film combines so many different elements and packed it into a fun action-adventure. Next up, I have Spider-Man Far From Home. Guys, I think this may be one of the funniest films in the entirety of the MCU. So many funny high school moments, a great relatable story involving a high school field trip that allows for charm, humor, and emotional attachment to these characters. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and his chemistry with MJ and Ned is even better in this film. The trippy scenes utilizing Mysterio's illusions are super cool to watch, the action is fun, and the implications at the end of the movie leave you craving more. Jake Gyllenhaal made for an intriguing villain, even if he was a little underutilized, and I've always just thought of this movie as an easy-to-digest fun time. Next on my list is Shang-Chi and the really long title. I enjoyed this film. I had a super fun experience in the theater, great humor, fun action, an intriguing story, you know, the Marvel things. I do think this film also suffers from a chaotic CGI extravaganza during the third act of the film, like many comic book films seem to. However, the characters, their dynamic, and the backstory of the Ten Rings really makes up for it. The film becomes an absorbing adventure when we're introduced to Ta Lo. Not sure if I said that right. My bad if I butchered it, I can't remember. But I loved the aesthetic and the cultural additions to the awe-inspiring world. Even though I can't say I loved the life-risking, strange entrance to the place. Oh, and the guy who ruined my childhood is back. It's fine. I'm over it. Not really. It was a super fun adventure and does all the classic Marvel recipe very well. Fun characters, witty dialogue, and some great action. That action sequence on the side of the building is phenomenal. One of Marvel's best. Although for some strange reason, looking back on this movie, I always remember this scene.
Oh, we're out of the vegetarian too. Now we only have beef. Beef.
21, can you do something for me?
Moving along, I have Black Panther. This was such a fresh and exciting experience. It was a splash of energy that the MCU needed, an amazing cultural moment, and a unique aesthetic all bundled into a pretty great film. The costumes, the cinematography, the music, all added to the beautiful trip into Wakanda. I love the vibe of this movie, and I'm also a huge music nerd and absolutely love what Kendrick Lamar did with the soundtrack for this film. Unfortunately, the third act for me is rather poor. The CGI looks quite horrendous, and the film turns into a cliche comic book film that takes me out of the movie. What is an exceptional and fascinating experience becomes dampened by the third act stumble. Nonetheless, this movie was a breath of fresh air, an extremely immersive story into Wakanda, an experience I'll never forget.
Miss me with that bush.
Spider-Man Homecoming. John Watts delivers an immensely fun coming-of-age story about a young Peter Parker. Peter has more power than he can handle in this film and struggles with the fact that he can't show it off. I love this aspect of the film and how Peter had to prove his responsibility to Tony, who feels somewhat responsible himself for dragging a teenager into this dangerous world of the Avengers. Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. have impeccable on-screen chemistry, tons of laughs, and great colorful action throughout this John Hughes-esque high school film. I also love the twist with Michael Keaton being the father of Pete's homecoming date, who made for one of the better Marvel villains in the end. I honestly could have used even more high school moments in the movie. The homecoming drama, Peter navigating social circles, and so forth. I'm a bit of a sucker for films taking place in high school, and thought this was an extremely fun time at the movies.
That's not a hug, I'm just grabbing the door for you.
Next on my list, I have Captain America: The First Avenger. This movie is packed with so much heart and emotion, and I've always found that final scene with Steve crashing the plane into the ice while saying his goodbyes to Peggy Carter to be extremely emotional.
You're gonna need a rain check on that dance.
All right.
I love the never quit attitude of Steve Rogers, how he never gave up no matter how much was stacked against him. The morals and personality of Steve make for such a hopeful and joyous experience throughout. Also, the film being set in the 40s gave it a unique retro style feel, with our introductions to some great characters. The action is solid here, but what really makes the film great is the attachment you feel to the characters while that action is going down. The First Avenger is packed with so much heart and is such a feel-good movie. Definitely an underrated MCU installment. Alright, I know this may be a bit of a hot take. But next up, I have The Incredible Hulk. Now hear me out. I really enjoy darker tone films, and I think the tone is handled perfectly in this movie. Edward Norton is amazing for this particular take on Bruce Banner, and I know this is kind of the forgotten MCU film that doesn't quite fit into the rest of the canon, but I can't help it. I've always enjoyed this movie. It's kind of like the light version of this. I love the internal struggle and watching an often very defeated Bruce endlessly search for a cure as he juggles the obstacles that come with being the Hulk. I've always found this movie to be a pretty underrated character study on the challenges both physically and mentally on people living with conditions. Furthermore, there's some pretty great action in the film. I've always found the ending fight with Abomination to be extremely entertaining. I kind of feel like if this film was released today, it would be acclaimed for its risk-taking tone and commitment to being an in-depth character study on a defeated Bruce Banner. This movie takes me back to when the first few Marvel films felt much more raw and real, and had a more singular vision. This film is unique, gritty, and far better than most people give it credit for, in my opinion. I know most disagree with me on this one, so tell me in the comments what you think, but I've always found this to be an adrenaline rush and a great character study at the same time. And instead, now we have this. No! And that brings us to our top 10.
It's the final countdown!
At number 10, I have Spider-Man No Way Home. What a phenomenon this movie was. Even though everyone knew Andrew and Tobey were going to be in the film, it didn't change how amazing it was. The execution was pretty flawless here. Andrew and Tobey provide some raw emotion and have exceptional chemistry with Tom. All of the characters were handled so well. Well, except maybe him. This film was endlessly fun, with moments of laugh-out-loud humor, mind-bending action, great cameos, and a surprising amount of heart. There are a few moments in the film that are truly heartbreaking, as well as moments that are truly inspiring. I think this is the best Tom Holland has ever been as Spider-Man, and like how cool was it seeing this in the theater? Even though we knew the characters from other universes were returning, it was still just so unbelievable to watch on screen. I found it a pleasant surprise that the introduction to Tobey and Andrew was used in such a gut-wrenching and emotional way as opposed to something cheap. The way that the Spider-Man... Is that how we're saying it? The way that the three Spider-Men comfort Tom after his loss is maybe the best scene in the movie for me. The addition of all these characters never felt like a cheap gimmick in the way I feared it may. This movie takes you on such an adventure and is immensely clever in the way that even audiences that aren't die-hard Marvel fans can appreciate it and enjoy it. There's far more emotion packed into this crazy thrill ride than I ever thought there would be. Definitely a special movie.
Thank you. No problem.
Next on my list is Thor Ragnarok. Definitely one of the most rewatchable films in the MCU for me. Vibrant, unique, and powered by exceptional humor and dazzling visuals. Thor Ragnarok is just pure fun. Taika Waititi takes Thor in a brand new direction, adding a bolt of energy to the MCU. The characters here are top tier, the Hulk is a fantastic addition, and Jeff Goldblum's character adds to the wild and quirky vibe of this movie. I love the stylized action in the film, the surprisingly grand stakes, emotional beats, and hilarious comedy throughout.
Oh, well, I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up.
Definitely a wacky and bizarre film, but once you allow yourself to enjoy the ride Taika is taking you on, you really appreciate the heartfelt thrills that come along the way. Thor Ragnarok is such a unique experience, not just within the MCU, but as a film in general. At number 8, I have Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think any of us expected this film to be as captivating and emotional as it was. A group of characters that the majority of audiences have never heard of before turned out to be the wackiest and most unique film in the MCU canon, at least at the time it was released. This film was comical, fun, and loaded with cosmic action, but best of all, takes us on an adventure with characters you grow to love so quickly. The dynamic between this crew of castaways is phenomenal. Their banter is top tier, chemistry amongst the actors is great, and I just love the duo of Rocket and Groot in this film.
Don't drink fountain water, you idiot. That's disgusting.
I adore this space adventure and has some of the greatest characters in the entire franchise, with some truly emotional beats throughout. Many forget that this film was a little bit of a risk for Marvel way back in 2014, but wow did it pay off.
What a bunch of a-holes.
Next up, I have The Avengers. Probably the movie I've seen the most times in a theater. What an endlessly fun movie. It's hilarious, packed with heart, wit, charm, and great action. The team has incredible banter in this movie, and I'll never forget how amazed I was as a young teenager, seeing all these heroes interact with each other for the first time. It felt so revolutionary. The film is genius in its ability to appeal to the masses, but also has so many moments for the avid comic book fans as well. Speaking of moments, this will forever be a legendary shot. And how about this incredible moment?
And I will not be bullied by that!
This film was such an adrenaline rush of pure joy in the theater. The chemistry is amazing between the cast, and watching the team begin to learn how to work together effectively is extremely entertaining. This movie is such a nostalgia trip, and I can't believe how flawlessly Marvel executed their Phase 1 plan. Though I will say, upon rewatching this flick, the color palette and way it's shot almost looks like the biggest budget soap opera of all time. I don't know, just me?
What are you doing here? Oh my God, did you follow us or something?
I came here to talk to Rafe alone.
So number 6 is a moment to tell you guys that I have an upcoming video on the state of the MCU. It's mainly just that because I don't know how to count and I screwed up. Anyways, on to number 5. Avengers Infinity War. I know many of you have this ranked even higher on your lists, but when it comes to these top 5 films, it gets so difficult to rank these movies for me, depending so much on nostalgia, the last time I've seen some of them, and just depending on what I'm in the mood for. That being said, I love this film. I love the ambition, the space action, and the ending of this film is phenomenal. I love how the film culminates with Thanos winning, executing his plan to perfection. This is the first MCU flick that ends on a somber tone, and I just remember everyone staring into the credits as they rolled, all shocked at what had just gone down. The film becomes extraordinarily riveting once Thanos touches down to Earth. The battle in Wakanda, the emotion between Vision and Wanda, which is all for naught when Thanos reverses time to steal the Mind Stone anyways. What a terrifying moment. Furthermore, the battle on Titan is phenomenal. Visually striking, intense, and you feel the damage Thanos is doing on these almost hopeless characters. And of course, we all remember this great scene.
I don't know what's happening. I don't know.
Thanos is the star of the show here, and I love the tone and aesthetic of this film so much. The reason it isn't higher on the list for me, despite how much I love it, is that sometimes the film feels a little messy juggling so many characters and concurrent storylines. And also, the scene in which Thor gets Stormbreaker always drags for me, and kind of ruins the flow of the movie a little bit. It just feels like such a side mission in an otherwise gargantuan plot. Yeah, I know Stormbreaker turns out to be critical of the plot, just this scene drags a bit, kind of like my rant right now. Anyways, I love this flick. At number 4, I have the sequel to Infinity War, and the culmination of the Infinity Saga, Avengers Endgame. I sometimes flip-flop between which film I prefer more, Infinity War or Endgame, but I think Endgame just had such an impossible task of culminating over a decade of the MCU, spanning 21 films, and did so in the most epic of fashion. If there's one word to describe this film, it's epic. What a hugely ambitious finale featuring unforgettable battle sequence with dazzling visuals and the highest of stakes. An emotional film with an incredible send-off for arguably the most iconic character in the canon.
Iron Man.
Though we all know he'll be back one day. The film has bleak undertones throughout due to the aftermath of the snap, and takes viewers on an incredible journey through space and quite literally time. There's laughs, moments of heart, moments of extreme sadness, and some of the coolest visuals in the MCU. The film is extremely ambitious and executes such a massive undertaking tremendously well. The journey through the past as we see moments from other movies was definitely a fascinating element of the plot and allowed for some emotional beats as well. However, I'll always think of the gargantuan final battle sequence, which is one of the coolest scenes I've ever witnessed in the theater. It is filled with so many memorable moments. I remember my audience cheering throughout as moments such as this one. Such an emotional and epic film. Somehow Endgame did not disappoint. At all.
Guys, all the time. What are you doing?
At number 3, I have Captain America Civil War. I absolutely adore this movie. It's thought-provoking, contains mature themes, and does an incredible job at portraying both sides of the Civil War. When watching the movie for the first time, I couldn't believe how the film was able to express both ideologies on the Sokovia Accords so well, which had me flip-flopping sides throughout. On top of all this, we are already so invested in Steve and Tony that the emotional stakes are relevant right from the opening frame of the movie. The characters are all at their best here, and we're so attached to them after all these films that when it comes to them picking a side and fighting, we're so invested. I just love the political side of superheroes, and the governance of superheroes is something I would always ponder for the MCU, and to see it tackled here in this flick so wonderfully was beyond fascinating for me. I love how Thunderbolt Ross lays out the perfectly valid reasoning for the need to have regulation on superhumans. And just as perfectly valid, Steve cannot abide by this. If he sees conflict, he needs to intervene. He isn't going to wait for the go-ahead from the government. This is 100% accurate to his character. I love the emotion of this scene here, and the immediate punch to the gut this has on Tony. This film has dark, daring, and mature questions to ponder, all wrapped into an insanely fun comic book film. The introduction to Tom Holland's Spider-Man is phenomenal. This is the best Black Panther has been in my opinion. He's just so riveting here, and I love the interaction between Vision and Wanda in this film. The airport sequence might be my favorite scene in the entirety of the MCU. I remember feeling emotional in the theater just because I couldn't believe what I was watching during this scene. The ending action sequence is filled with so much passion and emotion as Tony and Steve go back and forth. If there's one con I can say about this flick, it would be that Zemo isn't the greatest here, and I've never really enjoyed his portrayal and reasoning to even be in the movie at all. Otherwise, I absolutely love this movie. It's number 3 for me. Alright guys, we've come to the final 2. I just want to say if you guys stuck with me through this whole video, thanks so much, it means a lot, and if you could drop a like, I would really appreciate it. Anyways, on to the final 2. At number 2, I have the one that kicked off this whole MCU venture. 2008's Iron Man. This movie is a revelation. It's dark at times, hilarious at times. Robert Downey Jr. is phenomenal as Tony at all times. The whole cast is unbelievable for that matter. From a technical standpoint, this film is definitely one of the best in the MCU, if not the best. The sound design, cinematography, and direction are all A1. There's something about this movie that feels like such a raw and real film, and so far away from the corporate production, same color palette in every movie kind of vibe, like some of the MCU's more recent entries. The score is fantastic, the action was revolutionary, and the adventure is endlessly fun. From the amazing opening with AC/DC blasting as the Jeeps end up driving into enemy fire, to the ending twist with Jeff Bridges stealing Stark technology, the movie is immensely intriguing. I love the story, the characters we meet along the way, and the action still holds up to this day. Does anyone else know what I mean by the film feeling so real? It's gritty, appears like it was shot on film. I mean, I doubt it was, but it looks that way. It just doesn't look so polished and green screen reliant like the majority of the MCU. It feels as if so much creative control was given to Jon Favreau and he crafted something special with it. This movie will forever be one of my favorites and is so nostalgic for me, being 9 years old watching this in the theater and just having my mind blown. Not to mention, this movie pretty much invented the post-credit scene, which is crazy to think. What else is pretty unbelievable is that this movie has spawned the biggest franchise of all time at the box office, and only one film has topped it in my opinion. In my number one spot, I have Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This political espionage thriller is the most suspenseful film in the entire franchise. Its ability to induce anxiety as layers of the plot begin to unravel is second to none. It's some of the best direction in a comic book film that I've ever seen. This film does such an impeccable job at creating mystery and suspicion amongst everyone involved, that it even had me questioning how genuine Steve was. This movie is so successful at creating a twisted political thriller that it had me questioning the morals of the most perfect man in the whole canon of this franchise. The Winter Soldier is genius in its ability to create an aura of distrust, mystery, and suspense, while ultimately being a fun blockbuster at the same time. No other film in the franchise has quite given me the sensation that this film has. The giant action takes the back seat for the majority of the film's runtime, and instead, the film focuses on telling one of the best spy tales I've ever seen. There's intrigue, lies, and layers to all the characters within this captivating story. I honestly think if this same script was used for a non-comic book property, and was just a spy thriller without Captain America, it could be nominated for Oscars. Obviously, it would be altered because it's a comic book script, but I love the inner battle of Steve struggling to hold on to his vow of remaining a good man in a world of lies, wrongdoings, and conspiracy. I love the realistic political ideologies in films that deal with mythical and larger-than-life characters and consequences. This movie does a phenomenal job at executing this feat. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been hijacked, lies are spewed to the media, and there's a consistent bleak feeling that hope is lost in Steve's eyes, which translates flawlessly to the audience as we begin to view the world in the same way he does. The character depth is at an all-time high here, the twists and turns are the best in the franchise, and the vibe is the most unique out of all these films for me. The action is grounded, the espionage is riveting and relevant as ever, and what can I say, I'm a sucker for these types of political spy thrillers. Seeing an espionage thriller being disguised as a Captain America film is something that I'll never forget, and the fact that Robert Redford plays a pivotal role in this movie is just the cherry on top. Also, listen to this score. What an incredible achievement from Marvel this film is. It's my number one. Alright everyone, I'm dying to know what you guys think of my rankings, what films are too low, what films are too high on my list. What's your top 10 MCU films? Or give me your whole list. I'll be reading all the comments and would genuinely love to know your thoughts. Guys, it would mean the world if you could give the video a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll see you all for the next video.
21, can you...
No!